Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney on this channel. Normally, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney, but not today. Today, we're talking about the story of 2023 and still the story of 2024. Techy Wrecky. The end of the great tech hiring extravaganza. And I call it Techy Wrecky not because this is funny. This is not funny. I just, one, I'm a bit of an asshole. And two, I don't know. If I don't make light of it, it's a sad topic. There's a ton of people being hurt here. And I don't really know how to address that without a little bit of humor. So let's shoulder ahead. And immediately, I think people are going to say, Vince, why are you talking about tech layoffs? You don't even work in tech. Yeah. And I'll go a step further. I'm also not an economist. So you could argue that I should shut my mouth and let the experts speak. And fair enough. It's a fairly good point. However, I will say this. As an employment attorney, I see a lot of things going on that I don't think people who actually work in tech often see, and I also think economists probably don't see. I see a lot of custom compensation packages get put together and negotiated. I see a lot of, listen, there's a lot of available jobs for employment attorneys right now. The inbox and the LinkedIn of every single employment attorney I know is swamped with job offers, just positively swamped. They want people to handle layoff compliance gigs. They want to hire director of employment litigation jobs because they have so many terminations coming up. They know they're going to have lawsuits. They want people to defend those. I will tell you flatly, with utter confidence, the worst employment attorneys working in the United States right now, the worst, the absolute trash of the trash, can walk into multiple six-figure jobs that will last at least the next couple of years right now. Like people, employment attorneys from my industry, my peers, who can barely read, who can't get dressed without being covered in food stains, right? Like the worst of the worst, the people who can't present properly, the people who can't win in court, the people who do weird, gross, creepy things, they can all get jobs right now in terms of working employment law in tech. No question. So I can see that. And I know what that means. That happens every time layoffs get wild. Now, that started in 2023. And I thought by now the hiring frenzy for employment attorneys would be over, right? I thought everybody who was going to take the King's coin, right, the big tech coin, would have done so by now. And I think everyone did. I think everyone who was going to take the coin did so by the end of 2023. Here's the issue. The appetite for more employment attorneys to get hired into big tech has not been met, has not been filled. They need more. And that is scary because they've hired so many already. So many. It's wild. I've watched multiple employment firms shutter in the past 12 months. And it's not because they're not making money. It's because they can make more money. The principals and the partners of those firms are dodging in-house for the guaranteed money. If you're, listen, some of these jobs, I don't want to name the company, but I think I might have even spoken about this before. I've had one company approach me kind of directly. And listen, maybe they wouldn't hire me. Maybe it's just a recruiter, whatever. But they're like, yeah, we're doing director of employment litigation, starting the payment band at $450K. And I was like, listen, not into it. Love what I do. Not going to take that. And they didn't even blink. They were like, okay, you got anybody else? You know anybody else? I was like, well, sure. I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, you're a prestigious big tech name. I definitely have people who would take that gig for the guaranteed 450K. And they corrected me. They were like, well, it's 450K at the bottom of the band. Okay. Cool. Compelling, I'm sure, to some people. How much experience do you need to take that job? We want at least 3 years. But if we have to, we'll bend it for less. You're open to a second year associate. You would take a second year associate and pay them 450K for director of employment litigation at one of the largest multinational companies in the world. Apparently, yes. That is the level of thirst for employment attorneys in big tech right now. I take that as a shocking sign, because they have been hiring like mad people for 9 months now, maybe longer, and they still haven't been able to get all the employment attorneys they want. There's just not enough of us. And they need more. I'm surprised no one's founded an employment law school to turn attorneys from other industries into employment attorneys real quick for this job, because these jobs are valuable, right? Now, who's doing it? Who's doing the layoffs? Lyft, Meta. We had, of course, the collapse of the metaverse, which was never a thing. Snapchat, and I'm gonna give Snapchat a real rough treatment today, but I want to be clear. I love Snapchat. Snapchat is the playground where me and my middle-aged friends, cavort and joke and have fun with each other and have group chats and everything else, right? I love Snapchat. But they've had many layoffs, and we're going to use them as a bit of an example because they've done some wild things. We have, of course, also the artist formerly known as Google, Alphabet, layoffs. IBM, which in fairness is first and foremost a layoff company. Like, I don't know that IBM still has products, but they are always performing layoffs. They are the best in business at layoffs, and getting sued for age discrimination, as we know, and creating videos about how they plan to engage in age discrimination and showing them to all their employees. But the list goes on. Microsoft, Coinbase, TripAdvisor, Robinhood. No real surprise with Robinhood. Robinhood as a service was kind of exposed as a Wall Street shill, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, that harms retail investors to the benefit of institutional investors, right? There was the whole Gamergate nonsense that went on. I mean, Robinhood is not. It's hard to imagine they still have customers, although I guess they still do. Amazon is doing layoffs. Amazon, I thought, made more money than God. God called them up and like, hey, can I get a loan? Amazon was like, Bezos, was like, I'm busy with my divorce, but maybe call me next week. We can talk, right? Twitter, we're also going to use Twitter a little bit as an example. It's an important event in this whole debacle, so we'll talk about that, similar to how we're going to talk about Snapchat. But I think Twitter has cut potentially as much as 70% of their technical staff, which is very meaningful. Spotify, Netflix, Cloudflare, unofficially, officially, depending on who you ask, and so many more. So many more layoffs have already happened in the past 12 months, and there's so many more coming. And none of this gives me any joy. Like, I'm not here like, I'm glad all these employers are getting fired and getting laid off. Not at all. Like, these people, many of them are my friends, right? These are the people who fill the second and the third nicest bars in New York City. These are the people who invite you to a beer and you have 2 beers and then they want to tell you about their anxiety condition. These are good people, right? These are people who, like, some of them work hard. They're all generally very intelligent. And it's scary to see this happening to people because in some ways it's the end of the American dream, right? These people are kind of sold in the idea, like, you get good grades, you go to a good school, you get a big degree in a growth industry, and you'll do okay. And they're doing okay, but they're about to not be, and that's scary, right? So, why is this happening? Why is it happening? Why now? Right? I think we have to start with what a CEO's job actually is. The actual job of a CEO is to increase the share price, the stock valuation for the investors in the company the CEO is running. And you can do that by increasing revenue, right? You can do it by having more sales, more money coming in. Certainly there's investors who would look at high revenue and they would say, that's good. I like this stock. I'll invest more. The valuation is higher. And obviously you can also do it by increasing the profit that a company derives, right? Just because you have a sale doesn't mean it's going to come out as profit at the end of the year. So you can increase revenue to increase stock valuation, or you can increase profit. Like those are both viable ways. Realistically, though, that's not often how it's done in tech. Like you have advertising companies who do it that way to some extent, but there's a lot of companies who don't. Because in tech, you basically can increase your stock valuation with a really cool speech about an exciting idea, right? I mean, how many times have we seen that? Somebody goes on stage and gives a little TED talk about, I don't know, wearables. How'd that go? Right? Like, I guess people are starting to adopt Apple Watches a little bit, but I mean, that whole market didn't really get realized, right? And that's what they've been talking about, nothing but that for years. I mean, a great example is Peloton, right? Talk about a company without a business model. Talk about a company that just decided it was a tech company. We are a big deal because we have the best bikes. Even though you can get a copy of our bike, a clone of our bike, for like 1/5 the price, that does everything the same. But our product's the best because we have videos and like leaderboards and like you have to pay a monthly like huge fee per month to use the most expensive bike in the industry. Even though you could just buy the clone and then watch YouTube videos and get like the same thing, right? Like for a fraction of the cost. But boy, did they inflate that stock for a hot minute. And then poof, they disappeared so much value so fast. We're not even going to talk about their very tragic safety fiasco that hurt some children. And I think killed at least one, sadly, with treadmills. But that's a good example of a company that had a good speech, right? Like an exciting pitch that people bought into, and then the stock valuation went up. But what if you're not that kind of CEO? What if you're not the TED Talk CEO with the great hair and the cool vibe? How would you go ahead and increase the valuation of your stock? Well, we could look at Meta. What did Meta do? It had this new project called the Metaverse, right? Which sounded a lot like Second Life, which nobody liked. Nobody likes Second Life. But this Metaverse, it's really similar, but it was a big project. And they hired thousands of people for it. And in the course of hiring thousands of people, they generated some excitement, because how can you hire thousands of people and nothing happens? Clearly, if you've got thousands of people working on a project, it must be big. It must be big. So the stock value goes up because something big is happening. That's a fairly simple concept, right? Big hiring binges can lead to stock valuation increase. It's called staff farming, right? I didn't make any of this up. I'm riffing a little bit on a couple of other videos that I watched. I'm going to link at least one of them down below. It's not like the idea of staff farming originated with me. I mean, obviously not. CEOs have been doing it for quite a while. But you can increase your stock valuation that way. And that's something that has been happening in tech over and over and over again for the past 20 years. And as a result, you have massively inflated workforces with hundreds, occasionally thousands of people who don't really do all that much. That's horrific. Because now all of those people might get cut. And what are they going to do? Now, let's look at a company like Snapchat. Great example of this. I know we said we talked about Snapchat. I love Snapchat. It's my favorite social network. It's the only social network that doesn't bring negativity into my life. It's just me talking to my friends. That's it. But they mysteriously felt the need to hire literally hundreds of user interface engineers. They have engineers who work on just buttons on their app. I think there's like 40 buttons on the entire app. And I got to be honest with you, I love Snapchat. It is the worst interface in all of tech. You have to go watch YouTube videos to figure out how to work Snapchat. Maybe I'm a boomer. I mean, technically a millennial, but maybe I have boomer tendencies and I just can't do it. But I got to tell you, there is nothing user-friendly about Snapchat. Every single one of those user interface engineers could, I think, comfortably be pointed at and said, you must be terrible at your job. Also, I'm not actually aware that Snapchat has made changes to the interface in the past 8 or 9 years. So they have hundreds of people, and I perceive them to not be changing the interface that is an active obstacle to people using their app. Interesting. Why would you hire hundreds of people and then not have them do anything when you actually don't really have a great business model? I don't really think Snapchat has a great means of generating much revenue. As far as I know, their big pitch is, you should buy premium Snapchat and pay us monthly so you can get your chat streak back. I'm a middle-aged man. I don't know what a chat streak is, and I don't want one. I will pay you to stop asking me about it. Like you're just annoying me. And there's no what is a chat streak? I don't know, and I don't care. What are you even talking about? Right? Like, it's an insane thing. It's an insane thing that they did. And now they're wildly overstaffed. And they're doing layoffs. And hindsight is 2020. It's easy to say, oh yeah, of course, that didn't make any sense. But on the way in, investors didn't know that you were going to hire all these user interface engineers and then functionally have them do nothing and just keep the worst interface in the world, right? Like, if you're an investor when they're hiring all the user interface engineers, the investor could say, hypothetically, like, oh, well, the big problem with Snapchat is it's the UI, it's the user interface. So if they're hiring all these engineers, the UI is going to get better, the product will get better, it'll do better. I should invest because the share valuation is going to go up. And when you invest, the share valuation does go up, right? More people buying means share valuation goes up. So you see kind of an example of how this works. All this was exposed a little bit when the media's cartoon villain, Elon Musk, and everyone's got their own opinions on that man, he bought Twitter. And then eventually he renamed it X, right? Now, here's the thing, and I've touched on this already. I think he fired about 70% of the technical staff at Twitter. And people insisted, the media insisted, that Twitter would never run. It would grind to a halt. Let's be honest. Twitter never worked great. And it still works not great. It's still fine. Like, Twitter's still there. It runs about the same. Maybe even faster than it used to. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that you can fire about 70% of the technical staff at some of these big tech companies and see no real negative impact. The positive impact is you now get to run the company much more cheaply than you could before. That's exciting for a CEO, potentially, right? And that's a bit of a catalyst event. Everybody watched that happen. And they all kind of sat there and they said to themselves, right? As CEOs do, the Dr. Evil CEOs of big tech. And they looked at a couple of other things in the wake of Twitter. Tech wages have not really kept up with the massive inflation our country has experienced. Like, tech wages have not been increasing at the same pace as wages in some other industries. And they have certainly not been increasing at a pace where they would keep their original valuation, right? Their spending power in light of all the inflation that we've experienced over the past 3 years. And yet, a lot of these employees are staying put. And that's strange, right? If your wages are not increasing to keep up with inflation, you would think people would be making jumps, taking lateral deals, trying to find more money, right? But they're not. And some people will allege that that's because of a handshake, kind of under the table wage fixing agreement between some of the big tech giants. And I think some of that does go on. I think the U.S. government thinks some of that goes on. There's been some cases, there's been some fines. Like, that happens. But it can't be all of it, right? So why are these people not going anywhere? And sure, the tech CEOs know there's a recession coming. I know the media says that's not going to happen, but most media these days is propaganda. Maybe it always was. I think anyone with any financial literacy, anyone really looking at the signs knows we're facing kind of dark economic times right now. There's a recession on the horizon. We don't know how scary it's going to be. We don't know how bad it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be the apocalypse, but I am saying it's going to be a challenging economic environment. So, your employees can't seem to go anywhere. So if you get rid of them, you can probably get at least some of them back later. You've got a recession coming up. And let's face it, this is big tech's third recession. They're not rookies anymore. They know how to play the game now. And these CEOs figure out, hey, if I do layoffs now, in fact, if we all do layoffs at the same time and achieve safety in numbers, because we're all doing layoffs at the same time, and we all pitch it as cost-cutting measures to get ready for the recession, well, that might lighten the negative impact on our share valuation. We can get rid of all that bloated staff that we hired on to artificially inflate our own share valuation. And we can then, maybe, if we're really smart about it, even increase share valuation by saying, hey, we're ready. We did the smart thing. We're out ahead of this problem. Genius. This is why the CEOs make the big bucks, right? And then what if we hype up AI? We hype up AI and we make it sound like we're going to use AI at some point in the next 10 years to replace a bunch of coders. Now, everybody who's touched AI knows AI cannot currently do that job. AI cannot replace a talented coder in 2024. It cannot. At least not any AI that I'm aware of. But if you, as a tech CEO, say, hey, I'm getting ready for the recession, I'm being smart, and I'm getting ready for the future, the AI is the next big thing. You could really make a pitch. You might be able to keep inflating that share price, right? So, here we are. They have every reason to keep laying people off. And there's going to be trickle-down effects, right? We're going to have more layoffs in 2024. But I'll use New York as an example. Right now in New York City, there is more than 20 million square feet of commercial office space empty. 20 million. It increases by the day. these tech layoffs are just going to keep increasing that figure. It's going to keep happening in San Francisco, New York, all the big urban tech hubs. And this sudden drop in commercial space valuation is going to push some loans to come due, because those commercial spaces, those commercial buildings are often used as security on loans. So you're going to see some landlords go under. They're going to go bankrupt. Some shockingly big landlords are going to go bankrupt. But all those people who get laid off, they're going to leave the major urban areas. They were huddled in these urban areas, these expensive, high rent, high cost of living areas like New York and San Fran, where, let's be frank, the taxes are super high. There's a lot of homeless people. The quality of life is always, not always that great. But now they can move to cheaper, nicer digs, cool, developing social scenes, and go and work on developing other parts of the country. That's cool for them. And these people probably have the money to do that, and hopefully moving to these cheaper places helps them survive the storm. But what happens to the landlords? I know on the channel we don't care about landlords, we care about employees. But all these landlords, many of whom are very small, are going to see the devaluation of their rental properties and the loss of rent. What about the bars, the restaurants, the shops who cater to the people who go into work every day? Those businesses have already suffered greatly in New York during the last 3 years, and also this mass exodus from New York, right? What about the people who rely on the social safety net in places like New York? New York is cutting services as fast as it can right now. It's slashing the budget because it is essentially insolvent. It has lost so much tax revenue over the past couple of years. It's lost so much tax revenue that New York is having trouble affording its own corruption any longer. And I miss New York. And I want New York to do well. I want New York to bounce back. And I don't want the people working at the shops and the restaurants and the bars to suffer, and I don't want the tech workers to suffer. But I don't know what anyone can do about it anymore. It feels very much like this is now a done deal, and we can't avoid it anymore. And for lack of a better turn of phrase, it's a real bummer. It's a real bummer. But it does feel absolutely inevitable right now. And I know these videos on this channel, they're not popular, but I think it's worth getting out there. Like, you can be smart. You can get ahead of this. You can make decisions in the knowledge that this is happening. And I feel that you should, if you're in one of these areas or one of these industries. Anyways, like, subscribe, comment down below. Helps the channel to grow. If this was helpful. If you don't like it, give me the thumbs down. I get it. Let me know. Let me have it. All right? Take care, everybody. Remember, everybody works, but not everybody wins.